Hello, everyone, and welcome to In-Depth Alaska. One of the big stories we've covered in the past few days involved a collision between a snow machine and a sled dog team on the Denali Highway several days ago. At least 2 dogs were killed, several others were seriously injured. We found out a few days later after this happened that the dog team belongs to Iditarod champion Dallas Seavey. I spoke with Dallas on the phone extensively about what happened and the emotional impact this has had on himself and the other members of his team. I'm going to let you listen to that full interview now. Do you want to keep in mind that Dallas does go into detail about what happened to the dogs? It is uncomfortable to hear, so just want to make you aware. All right, here's that interview now, the full interview with Iditarod champion Dallas Seavey talking about that just terrible collision involving one of his sled dog teams. Dallas, can you just start from the beginning and describe for us what happened that day?
A lot. Yeah, so I took my team up to the Denali Highway up in Cantwell. I got there, I don't know, evening, starting to get dark about, and had, 31 dogs, I believe, and myself and 2 handlers. We're getting prepped to take off, and right before we launched, a couple snow machines pulled in and got some stuff out of their truck, I believe, and getting ready to take off, and just said hello, and I guess they related to us that Alpine Creek Lodge was expecting us because I phoned out there. Anyway, we got a brief trail report and then hitched up and took off, probably 30, 40 minutes after the snow machines had left. And I left first, and then I had a handler drop his dogs, and he took off behind me. And then the last guy hooked up his dogs and took off. So we were spaced by a few miles each. And at some point in that run, I guess I was probably, 23, 24 miles into the run, when a couple snow machines passed me at a pretty high rate of speed. But I was able to see them a mile or 2 out, so they were able to, slow down. It wasn't a big deal, and I waved at them, and I was just thinking, well, at least they know, that there's teams here, and we'll be cautious because I have 2 teams coming along behind me. But apparently that wasn't the case. And Josiah, who was mushing my second team, he had 9 dogs, part of my main racing squad. And the snow machines came around a corner at very fast. He's guesstimating, but 65, 70, somewhere in there, I think. And the first one went by him without issue. I mean, it's the Denali Highway. It's pretty dang wide. And, he was well lit. It was a bit of a turn, but you could probably see 200, 250 yards from the point that we got impacted. The second snow machine came around the corner, and he said about 3 seconds, I think, was the time frame, if that. I'd have to check with him, but came shooting around the corner and veered and just T-boned right into the team, or kind of at an angle. Hit the front dogs, then right on down the team, hit his sled, launched him off the sled, and then the snow machine kind of ricocheted and continued the other direction before it came to a stop. I don't know, probably 50, 60 yards past where the sled was. One dog was dead on impact, Oreo. The next one, I hate to be graphic, but said his whole body was jello. His legs were just in tatters. His jaw was broken off and was in, as you can imagine, extreme pain. Thankfully, that dog didn't survive very long. Another one had his leg just hanging by a small piece of skin, and obviously was also in pain. 2 others had compound fractures, and so he, saw that the snow machiner was not in any serious injuries or anything, and then started trying to stop bleeding. He took a tug line or a neck line, whatever rope was there handy, and wrapping it around the dog's stump, trying to twist it enough to stop or slow the bleeding. He got bit in the process because the poor dog is panicked beyond belief at this point, and he was able to try to slow the bleeding. The snow machines did stop, but weren't of much great use. Let's just say it that way. And thankfully, shortly thereafter, Isaac, who was our last musher, caught up with him, and as did Paige Drobny, who lives out there. She was on a separate snow machine traveling out to her place out there, and had a tub sled, and asked, how she could help. And she said, anything I can do, I guess. And so Isaac asked her to leave her big tub sled so that he could start trying to get dogs out, and asked Paige to run ahead and catch up with me. And then they did have an in-reach, so they were able to get an in-reach message out to our kennel. And immediately we had 2 people from the kennel load up and start heading north with a bunch of vet supplies. And Isaac took the 4 that were clearly very critical, but still mostly alive, and put them in the tub sled, and was trying to communicate with the snow machiners to see if there's a snow machine that was working, because he obviously didn't know what all had happened, if all the machines were broken or just the one. He got on one and started it, and the guy came over and said, "Oh, it's missing a ski," because it got ripped off when he hit the dog sled. And so then he went to the next machine and got it started, and found one of the machiners to drive it, and hooked Paige's tub sled to it. And he also had a big, a fabric, basically a really big fabric bag, a super sack, and had the dogs loaded in there and kind of huddled around them, and got headed back to Cantwell in our truck. About that same time, Paige caught up with me on a snow machine and told me what had happened. And I asked her to put in a little turnaround loop so I could turn my team around. She helped me do that, and then she hopped on my team, which I was mushing in front of a snowmobile because I was hauling a big load of food and straw and supplies to be out there for a while. And I hopped on her snow machine and ran back. By the time I got there, there was just the one snow machiner, the one that had actually made impact with the dog team. And I believe there was 3 in total. I'm not 100% certain. Everybody was a little bit dazed and focused on trying to administer care to the dogs more than counting snow machines. Like Isaac said, when he got there, there's just a bunch of lights, and he didn't know who was who and what was what, but he saw the dogs needed help. So when I got back, it was one snow machiner with a very beat up snow machine, and Josiah and the remaining dogs. I loaded up those remaining dogs and took them back to Cantwell, along with Josiah and the team that Isaac had been mushing. And we got back there. From that point, Isaac had already made it to Cantwell, loaded the dogs in the truck, and started driving south, where they met our people coming up from Talkeetna, transferred the dogs into the other vehicle. By that point, Olaf, the one that had been in really bad shape, had passed away. So they took the 3 that were still alive, and were able to continue to try to stop the bleeding and keep them as comfortable as possible, and got them on fluids, because they were all very near, one in particular, very near, not being with us anymore. Fortunately, those 3 made it to Pet Emergency in Anchorage, where, over the next day or so, one of them, Whopper, had his leg amputated. Siegfried, they were able to put him back together. He's got a full leg cast, and I'm hopeful that he'll make reasonable recovery. I think it's very unlikely he will ever be able to be an active sled dog again, but at least we're hopeful that he'll have the use of that leg and can live out the remainder of his life as a 4-legged dog, not a 3-legged dog. Finally, Houdini, Siegfried's brother, is still has swelling in his lungs and has a lot of damage to his lower leg. And we're thinking it's probably going to need to be amputated. However, in the last day or 2, he started having a little bit of feeling in it. So there's an off chance we might be able to save that leg, but it is scary because he still has to undergo surgery. He does have inflammation in his lungs, and that surgeries are always a little bit scary, especially when the dog's, had trauma, because it's not a guarantee that he'll make it through that. I hope he does, of course, and we are hopeful that he gets to keep at least most of his leg. But at this point, the most likely outcome is that it'll at least be a partial amputation. Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
It's a broad spectrum on it.
Dallas, let me ask you, what kind of emotional impact has this had on you and the other mushers on your team?
It's pretty significant. Obviously, we spend all year working with these dogs, and year after year after year, and it's really hard to see. um, there's not much that bothers me more than seeing a dog in pain like that. And it's one thing when we have, an older dog that passes away at 14, 15, 16, and it's coming, and it's, tragic and sad, of course. And you have a lifetime of shared experiences and a very close bond that you're kind of, seeing the end of. And I think in some ways it's even harder with these young guys. And these dogs were 3 and 4. I think all of them were 3 and 4. Because what you're seeing is that lifetime of experiences and them doing the thing that they love that's just been ripped out from underneath them. That never even happened,
Wow.
So it's pretty traumatic. Josiah, who was mushing the team and saw that happen, that's going to take him a while to get over. He's not ready to be back on a dog team yet, and I hope that he'll be able to heal from that, but it's not going to be immediate. Isaac, I think it was also very hard on him, as most of these dogs are dogs that he trained very closely all winter last year and felt a particularly close bond with them, and the year before. He's kind of grown up with these dogs as he's advanced as a musher, and Isaac's going to be competing in his first Iditarod this winter. And so basically when he's trying to race him to the vet and literally watching this dog fade away and not comfortably, that's, again, something that's going to take some time to get over. So yeah, there's a major impact, and that's not going to end anytime soon, because we do have, hoping everything goes well with the surgery, there's 3 more of them that, while they are still alive, they're not going to make a full recovery. They're going to be 3-legged or 3.5-legged at best, where they have the limb but only partial use of it. And that's not easy for these dogs to, especially in their prime, to kind of be forced to live a sedentary lifestyle when that's just not what they're designed for.
Yeah, it's a shame. Dallas, in your Facebook post, you made the observation that it appeared to you that the snow machiner that hit your team was intoxicated. Can you tell us about that, and what thoughts you have about people operating snow machines or any other kind of vehicle in a state where they shouldn't be?
Yeah. So when I got to the scene, there was the one snow machiner that had actually hit the dog team still there. His snow machine is, his skis ripped off. In fact, I just sent you a image here, and I'll explain that in a second. So he was there, and I was trying to communicate with Josiah and understand what happened, and the guy kept stumbling into me and trying to get kind of right in your face, and he reeked of alcohol and trying to explain or interject, and it was not coherent speech. He was slurring his words. I mean, the signs. And it took a lot to keep my cool. Let's just put it that way. I may have been a little bit forceful about telling him to back off, but I was trying to focus very hard on the things that could be done and to positively impact the situation and improve the circumstances for the dogs, and the rest of it can be dealt with later. According to Josiah, who I had him, compile kind of an incident report. That's kind of standard protocol for anything that happens, whether it's an injury or an accident, something breaks, a spill, whatever. First thing, when it's fresh in your mind, write down every detail of what happened. And in that thing, he was observed that all of them were stumbling around and not able to help him or, talk coherently. Because even when I got there, I think this had already happened probably 30 minutes or 40 minutes prior. But and Isaac made the same observation that he was trying to get somebody. He's like, hey, I need somebody to pull me out of here on this tub sled. Who has a snow machine that runs? And he said they were not really communicative, at least in a coherent manner.
Yeah.
So
Dallas, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine.
I was going to ask you, this has happened to your team during practice. It happened to Allie Zirkle out on the trail. I mean, what goes through your mind? It's tough enough doing these races, and now you have to worry about people who are intoxicated on snow machines. I mean, what goes through your mind even thinking about that being a possibility?
Yeah, it's one of those things that has always seemed really, I don't know what the right word is, distant perhaps. I mean, I know people personally who've had major incidents with snow machines, like you said, Jeff King, Allie Zirkle, a dear friend of ours in Kotzebue had an incident years ago. It happens, but it's when it has never happened to you, it seems very distant. If that makes sense. It almost seems hypothetical. And I've been mushing dogs for 30 plus years, and yeah, I've had close calls, but I've somehow been very lucky never to have it end up in this situation. Gotcha. So I don't know, when going forward, is it something that you are hyper cautious about? And I think the real frustrating thing here, and in most of these incidents that we've just discussed, there's nothing that you could do differently. And that's, believe me, in our kennel over the last week, that's been the constant thing is, people be sitting there with just kind of a vacant look on their face, and then they're just say there's nothing else we could have done. What else could we have done? And that's the frustrating part. And, and furthermore, it's not just snow machines and dog teams. This could have been a fat tire biker. It could have been a skier. It could have been another snow machine. It could have been a truck. It could have been anything. This is a pretty popularly traveled piece of trail. Only 12 miles out of Cantwell is where this happened. There's a lot of people that use that trail. And it wasn't a surprise the snow machiners we were out there. I mean, they saw us in the parking lot. They saw us getting ready to go. I just texted you a photo here, and this is not a narrow, winding trail. It's not an illumination problem. It's a road that's packed. It's 40 feet, 50 feet wide, that between the trees at least. So yeah, you might have to swerve in the deep snow. Furthermore, the dog team was all the way on the hard right edge of the road. So there was, tons of space in between. It's not a twisty, windy, narrow trail where, you come around a corner and there's a dog team right in front of you. Had the person been coherent, I don't see how this could have happened.
Gotcha. Dallas, is there anything you want to say about this incident that I haven't asked you about?
Especially, given the season, right? The overconsumption in driving is not a good call. And whether or not it ends up being an incident like this and you end up living, but with this kind of on your conscience, or a situation, we see this all over where it's snow machine hits a tree or goes in the open water, or obviously vehicles off the road, people die. So I think it's a very, very poor judgment call and probably should be avoided, and maybe this should be kept fresh in mind, particularly in this upcoming season. And I know everybody's excited to get out on the snow machines, get out there and have fun. Do it. Just please do it safely.
Good advice. Hey, Dallas, thanks for talking to us.